What is up, guys? Atomic Moon here with another tutorial. I've got my fan on behind me. If you can hear that in the background, it's my AC's out. And it's like 80 degrees in here. So if I'm gonna suffer, then you have to suffer too. The noise of my fan. Okay. Anyway, tutorial Tuesday. I'm gonna pick up where I left off with my tutorial last week, talking about stems, mixing sums, mix downs, that sort of thing. I'm gonna be checking my OBS intermittently to make sure that my audio is still going. I talked last week about stems being used for a method to make cleaner mix downs, and stems are basically when you take your large audio project that has a lot of tracks on it, 50, 60 tracks, and you condense them down and group them together into different categories, and then bounce those categories back into different audio parts, and then use those audio parts for your main master. And if you look at my last tutorial, you'll see my project. My project was about 60 tracks or so, which isn't too big, but that's about usually where my projects are when I kind of get to where they're finished. And I had all those channels grouped into different categories: drums, sub bass, instruments, vocals. I took all those groupings and I bounced them down into audio tracks, and that is what I have here. So right here I have all my drums, I have my sub bass, I have my instruments, I have my vocals, and my effects track. And the way I did that is just go into File, Export, Audio Mixdown. If you're not using Cubase, I'm sure Pro Tools and Ableton is a very similar setup to this. So you're going to go to your Export menu, and right in here, this menu, you select what your output is. Typically, it's going to be set on your stereo out, but you can select whatever channel you want to specifically mix down. But you'll notice you can only select one track at a time. What I was able to do is go to Channel Batch Export, and this allowed me to select multiple tracks. So I was able to select all my group tracks and get some audio mix downs of that, and import them into a different project. And this is what I have here. Now, why would you want to do this? Well, for starters, it saves so much processing power, because once you get towards the end of a project, your processor is going to be like way almost peaking out. And as you can see, now that I have all this stuff bounced to audio, it's my entire project, and my processor is way down here, barely hardly using any processing power. And what that's going to allow you to do is stack more processing on top of these stems, and you won't have to worry about clipping out your processor. Because I mean, towards the end of a project is when you start using plugins on your master chain, plugins on group channels, and those plugins, especially if you're using something that takes up a lot of if you're using a plugin that takes up a lot of resources and you put it on a plugin channel, for example, tape saturators typically eat up a lot of processing power. So if you have that on your master, then your processor is just going to start acting crazy. So it's a lot better to just bounce everything down to audio and then start applying your master tape saturation or your master plugins or whatever. It's going to be a lot easier on your computer, and you're not going to crash and have to worry about stuff like that. My main thing when bouncing to audio is to just take a look at it and see if just anything jumps out at you. You know, just what do you notice? Like, I just bounced all these stems down, and I haven't done any sort of processing to them really, or any sort of editing. I kind of edited out some sub bass parts, but you know, it helps just to look at your waveforms and just see if something crazy is there. Excuse me. And looking at this, what I'm noticing is just this little bit right here in my instrument tracks where all of a sudden a synth comes in and now I'm like hitting almost, I'm almost peaking out. And so that might be something I might go back and make another mix down of this and maybe bring that back down, or just, I might leave it there if I want it there, but it might be something that I can think about, and bouncing these audio files down and being able to look at them, just a visual confirmation of it. You'd be amazed what you'd be able to find. I know for audio sampling that I do a lot for when I'm making kicks. A lot. If you look at my YouTube tutorial about how to make dance kicks in Massive, what I'll always do is I'll make the kick that I like, and then I'll maybe make 4 kicks in succession, bounce that to audio, and then look at the wave files and see which one is the cleanest one. Because a lot of the times, if you're using a synthesizer, if you're using something like that, even if it's restarted via gate, which is supposed to be triggering the exact same sample to where everything is uniform, if you look at the audio file, a lot of the times you'll see that one kind of works better than the others. And in electronic music, particularly, everything has to be surgically precise. Everything is very mechanical, and you want that sort of consistency in your samples with sample-based music. It's not necessarily the same with analog-based music, but with sample-based electronic music, this is something you're really going to want to look out for. One other thing that I kind of noticed, I'm not playing any audio from this because my audio's not really routed to record on here. And this isn't really about the actual audio. This is about mixing the stems and the process of doing it, and you trying it on your tracks. But something that I noticed when I'm looking right here on my instrument track, I'm telling you guys, I've tried. This is like the 6th time I've tried to record this video, and my my audio driver keeps on crashing. So I'm having to check this constantly to make sure that it hasn't crashed. Anyway, I'm noticing like right here with my main synth that comes in during the breakdown or whatever, there's kind of these slight volume increases and decreases. Like if you notice these notes right here, compared to these notes, it seems like these notes in particular right here are a little bit louder than these other notes right here. And that might not seem like a big deal, but if we're going with an electronic consistent audio that we're trying to go for here, then little things like that will make a big difference. So what I'm probably going to do with that is bounce this. You can really kind of see it right here. What I'm probably going to do is go back and bounce that to audio, normalize it, and get it a little bit more even. Yeah, these are my drums. My drums are pretty loud. Vocals, I'm having to do a little bit more processing on my vocals. And this is where you can really do some mixing stuff as far as trying to get things set correctly in your mix. For example, you would want your vocal channel to be more centered. So you might do some mid-side EQing. You might use a stereo expander and actually use that to shrink it down, which is what I did on this track, to where the vocals aren't necessarily so wide, so that they're kind of more towards the center. And then conversely, you would take your instrument channel and maybe use your stereo expander to expand it out a little bit. And what you would do previously is you would have everything mixed down or routed to your stereo out, and you might, on your stereo out, use a stereo expander and expand the entire mix out. But that would also expand your vocals. So basically, this method just kind of gives you more control as far as being able to place all these different stems within a mix. So yeah, that's kind of I just wanted to show you guys the process and give you guys an idea of what I'm trying to go for here. Like I said, this is a new technique for me. I am not by any means an expert at it, but this is just something new that I'm trying to apply, and I'm kind of bouncing it off of you guys and trying to explain it as I'm going along. Maybe that's not the greatest idea, but maybe this will give you something to think about. Like I said, mixdowns for me, I feel like, is something I'm trying to focus on improving and getting better at, and I think that this method will help me with that. The next question becomes, would I do my mastering here, or would I bounce it? Basically, what I'm probably going to do, instead of mastering here with these stems, I would bounce all of these waveforms down to a single track once I got them where I like them. So basically, I'm taking 60 tracks, bouncing those down to these 5 tracks, and then taking those 5 tracks and bouncing that down into 1 track. And then that 1 track I would do my mastering editing on. I would do some automation, things like that, slight EQ changes, very subtle, nuancy type things, get my loudness where I want to get it. But I would do that after I would bounce all these tracks to a single audio track. So that would be my next step. I will most likely make a video on that next week, or maybe I'll talk about something else. But I am just glad that I was able to get this video recorded and my microphone did not crash, because this has been a very frustrating process for me. But we got through it. Yeah. I'm pretty excited about this track. I'm looking at my early save files, and I think I started this October 2018, so we're coming up probably about a year and a half that I've had this song, so I'm excited to finally kind of get it out. And I haven't released any music in a couple months, so trying to get things started here in 2020 with a bang. Also, another pro tip is every day that you're working on a project, my saving system is to save with dates. So say I'm saving this, anytime I'm working on a project and I'm going to a next day, I will save it with today's date. So today's date is March 3rd, so I always do my save files as the date. So it's 3/03/20, and you can see my old save files go all the way back to 2018. I would highly recommend doing this. This is just kind of a fail-safe. If you do something and you ever need to go back to an old file or old project file, then they're all right here. It's very easy to get to. The last thing you want to do is save over your original file to where you only have that one original file, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh wait, something happened, I need to go back, but you can't. So anytime I'm starting a day, going back to an old project, I always save with today's date. I could not recommend that enough. If you do not do that, it will save you a lot of time and a lot of headaches and a lot of trouble. So yeah, hopefully this helps you guys. Hopefully this kind of maybe gives you something to think about. That's kind of the entire point of this. Thank you guys for watching, and see y'all next time.